Gentleman yields back. Pleasure to recognize the ranking member of our subcommittee, Dr. Burgess. Okay.
Ranking pharmacist first.
All right. We'll go to, as I said at the first panel, the only pharmacist in the Congress,
Thank you.
Mr. Carter from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did somebody want to respond to that last question?
Yes, I was hoping to just add that there really are no safe residue levels or withdrawal periods per the FDA for phenylbutazone, which I'm sure you're familiar with Bute for horses. It's a common pain relief analgesic. I give it to my 3 rescue horses on a regular basis when they're sore. And the FDA has been very clear that there is absolutely no appropriate use for a horse that's received Bute in the food supply. I brought from my barn this morning Dermocidin gel, which is a sedative that I use for my mini horse because he's afraid of the veterinarian. And it says, do not use in horses intended for human consumption. Ivermectin, a dewormer, regularly provided to horses, same label. So I think it's proper, and we want horses to receive these drugs and treatments and therapies. In the summer, my horses are sprayed for flies every single day. So they are definitely not candidates for slaughter. And I think it's really important to realize that we know this already here in the U.S. per the FDA. So that's what we lean on, is that expertise.
Okay, thank you. Okay, enough horsing around. Let's thank all of you for being here. This is extremely important. I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Montford, adulterated, and I'm following along the same lines as Dr. Bouchon's questioning, but it's defined by the FDA to mean a product that's harmful or injurious to human health. And, we all know how parents are, especially with the first or second child. Now, by the time you get to third or fourth, it doesn't matter. But the first or second, you're very, very careful. Well, you're very, very careful, and we know how they are. How do you think that, or what are your concerns with parents reacting to this classification of adulterated? Is that you think that could possibly lead them to switch to non-regulated alternatives?
Well, it's a very frightening term, and I think if there were any concern that something was adulterated, absolutely yes. They may turn to homemade formula, which obviously is of concern and is not recommended, or some other alternative.
Well, what about the use of non-regulated formula alternatives that might be past the use-by date? Is that ever a concern?
I'm sorry, could you?
The non-regulated alternatives that are not adulterated, not labeled as that, but they're non-regulated, and if they're past their use-by date, is that a concern for people?
It would probably depend on the product that you're talking about.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned in your testimony that you would support taking steps to ensure that expired infant formula wasn't being sold at retail. And I was surprised to learn that this was a problem, to be quite frankly with you. Is it that common?
It isn't extremely common. Safety is a top priority, so of course we support any measures that could eliminate this issue. It seems to occur often, not often, but sometimes in smaller stores, convenience stores. It's less common in the bigger retail chains.
Whose responsibility is it? Is it the retailer to make sure that doesn't happen, or?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any kind of fines or anything associated with that? Is it different state by state, or what?
It is the retailer's responsibility, and to be honest, I'm not sure state to
Right.
how it
Right.
is.
It's hard to believe that that's happening in our current system. As pharmacists, I know that we have an expiration date, and we certainly have the responsibility to make sure that we're not using a product past its expiration date. But in our case, a lot of times it's based on the efficacy of the product and not necessarily other things. So
This is different though. This is a use by date, not an expiration date. So use by again is a quality issue.
used by as a quality issue as opposed to an expiration date being
You should not use.
you should not use it past
my
this date.
understanding, yes.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, well, thank you very much for that information, Madam Chair. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.